So our final session of the day is going to be about season extension, ventilation. And the topics that Norm is going to be talking about include a summer and winter issue. Air circulation is not ventilation, considering humidity and temperature and the consequences of both. So take it away, Norm.
Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to just clarify, most people would see ventilation, and like we're talking about season extension here, which, okay, season extension mostly is like using it longer in the winter, but season extension is also in a more practical way how to use it, how to use the building effectively in the warm times as well. And so ventilation is typically seen as something that is a summer issue, like it's too hot, so you need to get rid of the heat. Uh, Ventilation is very much a winter issue as well. And but the sort of the partner with ventilation in the wintertime is humidity control. When you have things closed up, it is very easy to get into a situation where there is excess moisture, not just excess moisture like on its own, but like excess moisture for what is good for those plants. Or even if you were using this building as for livestock housing, uh, probably even more so, like you do not want to get your animals exposed regularly to excess moisture. It breeds all sorts of problems. And so ventilation is just as much a concept that needs to be dealt with if you're using the building in the summertime as it is in the wintertime. And the other thing I just wanted to clarify as well is that air circulation is not ventilation, but they are both equally as important. In the wintertime, when you have things more closed up, it is even more important to get the air moving around horizontally so you do not get stagnant spots. Now that concept is important in the summertime as well, but probably a little bit less so, just the same as, okay, in the wintertime, the air exchanges is a little bit less of a concern than it would be in the summertime, but they are not you cannot separate them. Like they have to be dealt with in their correct proportion, regardless of the season that you are dealing with. Now, every plant needs to has a threshold temperature at which it will stop functioning, and if it gets even higher above that, it will kill it. So if you get to that threshold, the plant will stop functioning for a period of a lot of times 10 to 14 days. So that is important to make sure you keep the temperature down. And at the same time, you keep that moisture down because you don't want things to start to rot. Now, the thing to keep in mind also with ventilation, it might seem like a no-brainer, but heat rises. Heat rises, but moisture in heat rises as well. So if you are looking to get rid of some moisture in the wintertime, you may be sacrificing a bit of heat, like you want to keep the structure closed up so that you can contain the heat, because you get the heat out, that means you have to turn the furnace on, and that's going to cost you money. What you need to remember is that by having an unhealthy condition for the plants, you're going to get lower performance. And when you get lower performance, you get less return. So spending a little bit of money on heat when you get rid of the moisture means that you're in a more ideal situation for the level of moisture, um, even if that means that you got to turn the furnace on for a little bit. So it's it's always a cost versus benefit evaluation. You want to maximize performance, and if that means that you got to spend a little bit more money on heat, then you do that. And that's why some of the growers that I know, even in August, when they have tomatoes or cucumbers in their greenhouses, they will turn the heat on for a little bit first thing in the morning because that fosters drying of the plants. When the quicker that the plants dry from the dew, the quicker they're able to initiate photosynthesis and the growth. So again, for each different crop, there is a different threshold point that you have to remember. Now, because heat rises and moisture rises, it is important to keep in mind that you have adequate peak ventilation. Now, Andy, if you could put up that picture of our end vent. A continuous roof vent is extremely effective, but extremely expensive. So ventilating out of the ends, if the building is not too long, is an adequate plan B. Now, the problem with having a window up higher is how do you get at it? How do you operate it? And so we've come up with this configuration, which we call a center pivoting gable vent. Now, the nice thing about this, no matter how strong the wind is against this window, it's what we call weight neutral. There's some pushing on the top and there's some pushing on the bottom. There's an equal amount both ways. So no matter how windy it gets, the window's never going to shake, which if you just have something that flips up and you have something propped underneath, the wind could get a hold of it in a way and it closes it. Also means that you have to climb up there to do it. What this does, it operates from a series of pulleys that you can operate from the ground. Now, this would be a first stage of ventilation. So like in February, when you have a little bit of moisture that you want to get rid of out of the air, you can open this a crack and you have the option if this particular side is where the cold wind is coming at, you open this just a crack, whereas the other end you can open all the way out. What you're creating, and when the air goes over the building, you're creating a vacuum at the opposite end, and it sucks the air out. So even though you only have a little bit of a crack on the wind side, you're going to get a quick exchange of air. Now, we do have, this is a manually controlled. Manually controlled is the cheaper way to go, provided you're not including the cost of your labor. Obviously, you have to be there to open it, you have to be there to close it. We do have the same thing as something that's motorized. And I think Andy has a picture of that as well. And so you're spending a little bit more, but you can connect it to a thermostat. So that, and you always place that thermostat close to the end. So when the cold air comes in, it reacts quickly and it closes. Whereas the other end is going to stay open, then is going to stay open longer. No, that's one of the things that makes a roof vent so expensive, is because you've got a $3,000 motor and gearbox combination that is driving that. Now this is the window that we were talking about, and there's a little motor attached to the inside that gets activated by the thermostat, and it pulls those little louvers open, and it holds them open until the temperature is satisfied, and then there's a spring attached to it, and it just closes. So these are quite a bit more money than the other ones, but the advantage is there's no big electrical required. You can just run those things actually off an extension cord. That's how small the power is to them. It used to be that the majority of our ventilation was happening through roll-up sides. Roll-up sides are a way of continuously opening both sides of the building and opening a good size section. As long as there's air movement outside, it works very efficiently. But when you have a dead calm day, and even though, Aaron, that might not seem like you have those happen very often where you are, you will get them. And the roll-up sides stop functioning really when you have a dead calm day. The other thing is, even if the wind is blowing, then it goes across the bottom and you have a hot spot up top. So what we suggest is that you have it in combination, the roll-up sides with the peak vent, so that like heat is going to rise and it will draw the air in the bottom and it creates the turbulence. There's always an importance of creating turbulence. You want the air coming in. It's not just a matter of opening the whole end and the air flows in, because what happens is the air just has sort of this lazy, just kind of flows in. What you want is to restrict it a little bit so that when the air comes in, it tumbles and it will mix with the existing air that is around it and create a much more uniform changing of the air. So, see, that is one of the reasons why people will have horizontal airflow fans in a greenhouse, because it keeps air moving around like that. So the advantage of the roll-up sides is that they can be installed at whatever height you need. The average is 4 feet up, so you're creating a 4-foot opening. But if you've got plants right on the ground or you've got small animals right on the ground, you can also move this up a little bit higher and put a skirt around the building to protect from the drafts. The other sort of rule of thumb that I give is that the more protected the area is, the higher you go with the roll-up sides. If you're on the crest of a hill without a tree in sight, 2 feet is probably plenty. Meanwhile, if you're in a clearing in a forest, you're probably going to want to go to at least 6 feet. Plus, you need to have those vents at the peak so that you can get rid of that air. The one of the things that you can also do, like I mentioned, that motorized louver being connected to a thermostat, you can also connect it to a humidistat, so that it is automatically, you can set it and say, I want 70% humidity max. Okay, as soon as it opens and then it's satisfied, it's going to close. It is advisable to have a thermostat override so that if the temperature really starts dropping, it will close it even if the temperature, if there is still too much moisture, because you can deal with the extra moisture in an hour or two. If the temperature drops to like 5 Celsius type of thing, it might be too late to save anything now. So there definitely is a whole system of how everything is tied together. It is another one of those things of understanding what you're dealing with, understanding what you are the consequences of what you're doing and what the requirements are, so that you can activate this, so that this will happen and that, and so that will happen without creating a domino effect of the wrong things. Are there any questions?
There's no questions that have come through the chat yet. I'm not sure if everybody's just processing all of that information that you gave. I also put a link for a quick poll. If anybody who is attending today could answer a couple quick questions and just give us a little bit of feedback about the event today, that would be really awesome and appreciated. You don't have to, and you don't have to, you can do it anonymously as well at the link that I posted in the chat. And so just as a little additional note for everything today.
The bottom line here is, as much as I appreciate how much everybody is giving positive feedbacks and is finding this is useful, I'm going to set the bar higher for myself the next time and do even better. Now, one of the challenging things with putting something like this together is that, like, I could easily talk for an hour or two on each of these topics, and that's not the point. So, like, I want to create awareness. I want to, also get each of you thinking in how what I'm saying applies to your situation, and all of the things that are important to consider before you actually have posts in the ground, rather than after you've got a crop in there and find out that you really built this in the wrong spot.
Well, and I know the book covers a lot of these things in a little bit more detail as well, and that's why we wanted to offer at least the ebook for free this week. And I'm going to be doing a draw shortly for giving away a couple of the paperback books to the people who've sent me their email addresses today throughout the day. And so we'll give out a little bit more information with things and whatever when we can. So
I know I had one grower that was talking to, a very experienced grower that was talking to me one time, and he said, "Do you have any idea how many thousands of dollars I would have saved if I had got your book when I started?" One of the things that comes into play when you're putting roll-up sides on a structure is the top of the roll-up side has to be, like we've made a little bit of mention in the in previous thing when we were talking about how to get the air from the top into the bottom. The top of the roll-up is, there's a number of different choices, and basically it's a situation, you get what you pay for. You can do wood strapping on a 2x4, you can do wire lock on a 2x4, or you can do wire lock on steel tubing. Wire lock on steel tubing will cost you a little bit more now, but it is basically done for the life of the structure. But it's not something that we automatically include in the packages, simply because there are other ways to do it, and we are always, budget mindful of everybody's situation. And it's just another one of those things that we make sure that we point out, so that when you're making a decision, you can have all of the facts to make that decision.
well, and that's one of the handy things that we have on our website as well, under the getting started tab, is just sort of a checklist for people to go through, so that they can make sure that they have all their bases covered and that they've considered everything that they need to consider. And that they can just check it all out and see the different options, because a lot of people don't realize different concepts that they need to think about, right?
Yeah.
So
And certainly, like at this point, if there isn't a question that you have on the ventilation, if something came to you that was on a previous one, we can address that now too.